Imagine being at the top of your game, admired by millions across the globe, and then suddenly, everything comes crashing down. That's exactly what happened to Michael Jackson. Known as the King of Pop, his life was a dazzling roller coaster ride full of achievements, controversies, and, ultimately, tragedy. He was a man who lived under the constant spotlight, someone whose music touched hearts, whose dance moves were iconic, and whose legacy will live on forever. But, despite all the success and adoration, Michael's life ended in a way that left the world in shock. The truly heartbreaking part of Michael Jackson's death, however, wasn't just that he was taken from us too soon. It's that his final words were about the very thing that ended his life. The drug that killed him. Propofol. Now, let's take a moment to process that. When you think of Michael Jackson, you probably picture his legendary performances, his iconic music videos, and the unforgettable impact he had on pop culture. You might even remember his sudden and unexpected death in 2009. But his passing wasn't just another celebrity tragedy. There's something chilling about the way it all happened, and especially about how it all ended. His death wasn't a random accident, and it wasn't just an overdose. It was something more tragic, something that could have been prevented. So, how did it come to this? How did the man who seemed to have it all, who was adored by millions, end up losing his life to a drug that was intended only for surgery? To answer that question, we need to rewind a little bit. In June 2009, Michael Jackson was in the middle of preparing for his long-awaited comeback tour, This Is It. Fans were beyond excited, and the world was eager to see the King of Pop back on stage, dancing and singing the way only he could. But behind the scenes, Michael was struggling. Not with his music or his performances, but with something far more personal, his health. Specifically, his insomnia. Michael had been struggling with sleep issues for years. He couldn't sleep at night, no matter how hard he tried. This had been an ongoing issue that he couldn't seem to overcome. Here's where things start to get complicated. In his desperation to get some sleep before the big shows, Michael turned to his doctor, Conrad for help. But, instead of finding a solution that was safe and effective, Murray gave Michael something that would ultimately cost him his life. The drug? Propofol. Now, Propofol is not your typical sleep aid. It's an anesthetic that is primarily used in hospitals to put people under during surgeries. It's not a drug that you give to someone to help them get a good night's sleep. But Michael Jackson's doctor, Murray, decided to give him this powerful drug as a way to treat his insomnia. It wasn't the first time that Murray had administered Propofol to Michael. In fact, it had become a regular part of their routine. But what Murray didn't take into account was just how dangerous this drug is when used outside of a medical setting. Propofol works by putting you into a deep sleep, but it's a sleep that's very different from the natural sleep you and I experience. It's far deeper, and it can stop your breathing altogether if not properly monitored. And that's exactly what happened to Michael Jackson. He was given the drug, but his body wasn't able to handle it. His breathing stopped. He stopped breathing, and by the time anyone realized what had happened, it was too late. But here's the part that still sends shivers down my spine. Michael Jackson's last words were about Propofol. Reports say that, as he lay in bed that day, he asked his doctor for more of the drug. "Just give me what you gave me. I can't sleep," he said. These words are chilling because they show just how desperate Michael had become. He wasn't trying to get high. He wasn't chasing a feeling of euphoria. He wasn't trying to escape reality. He just wanted to sleep. That's all. He wanted to sleep, and in his desperation, he turned to a drug that he trusted, but that ultimately led to his death. Now, let's address something important here. When people hear about Michael Jackson and drugs, they often assume he was living a reckless, drug-fueled lifestyle. That couldn't be further from the truth. Michael Jackson wasn't addicted to partying. He wasn't using drugs to escape from the pressures of fame or to seek pleasure. He was dealing with a serious medical condition, insomnia. And that's the thing people often overlook when they talk about Michael's drug use. It wasn't about abusing substances for fun or pleasure. It was about seeking relief from a problem that had haunted him for years. It's important to understand that Michael's story isn't just about drugs. It's about a man who was suffering in silence, a man who needed help, but didn't know where to turn. And instead of being given the right kind of help, he was given a dangerous drug that ended his life. Propofol is a powerful anesthetic, but it's not something that should be used outside of a hospital. And when Michael's doctor decided to use it to treat his insomnia, he put his patient's life at risk in ways he could never have anticipated. Now, you might be thinking, how could something like this happen to someone so famous, someone so talented? But the truth is, addiction, mental health struggles, and substance abuse don't discriminate. They don't care how famous you are or how much money you have. Michael Jackson may have been the king of pop, but that didn't make him immune to the pressures of life or the struggles that many of us face. He was human. He was vulnerable. And like many of us, he was looking for a way out, a way to find peace and rest in the chaos of his life. So, what can we learn from this? First and foremost, we need to recognize that no one is invincible. We all have our struggles, and sometimes those struggles can get the better of us. Michael Jackson's death wasn't just about the drug. It was about a man who felt overwhelmed, desperate, and in need of help. And unfortunately, he turned to the wrong solution. But the bigger takeaway here is that we need to be more mindful of the medications and treatments we're given. Just because something is prescribed by a doctor doesn't mean it's safe. In fact, many prescription drugs, when used outside of a controlled environment, can be extremely dangerous. And that's why we need to be careful. We need to ask questions. We need to make sure that we're getting the right kind of care and treatment. Because just like Michael Jackson, you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you're desperate for help, only to end up making things worse. Another important lesson from Michael's story is the pressure that comes with fame. Michael Jackson wasn't just a pop star, he was a global icon. He was constantly in the public eye, always expected to perform, always expected to be perfect. The weight of that kind of pressure can be overwhelming. And when you're constantly being scrutinized by the world, it can feel like there's no escape. That's why it's so important to talk about mental health and addiction. We need to recognize that these struggles can affect anyone, even the most famous people in the world. Fame doesn't protect you from pain. In fact, it can make things even harder to bear. Michael Jackson's death was a wake-up call for many of us. It showed us that addiction, mental health struggles, and substance abuse aren't just things that happen to other people. They can affect anyone, rich or poor, famous or unknown. We need to start having more open conversations about these topics. We need to break the stigma and make it easier for people to ask for help when they need it. If you take anything away from Michael's story, let it be this. Don't be afraid to speak up if something doesn't feel right. Don't be afraid to seek help if you're struggling. And most importantly, don't ignore the warning signs. Just like Michael Jackson, you deserve to find peace without having to resort to dangerous solutions. Now, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Michael Jackson's tragic death? Do you think his story highlights the dangers of prescription drugs? Or maybe it's a reminder of how fame comes with its own set of unique pressures? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about it. I'd love to hear your opinions and start a conversation. If you're interested in hearing more about the dark side of fame, addiction, and how some of our favorite stars have struggled with their own personal demons, check out this next video. It's a deep dive into another celebrity tragedy that you won't want to miss. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. Let's continue to learn from the past, and let's make sure we're always looking out for each other. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.